And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Ben is back. Happy holidays, buddy. How'd it go?
It was excellent. How's your holidays?
Oh, still going.
Yeah, still going. We got another holiday coming up on Old Wednesday.
Terrific.
We'll be here tomorrow. Getting you ready for the college football playoff.
Yeah, we're talking some college football while we can. Of course, we'll dive into BYU coming up here in a moment. We can talk some Jazz, too, if we want to.
No, I think the Jazz games have been interesting. Minus you having to sit an extra hour while the team got ready in Cleveland. Again, I don't really feel bad for you having your job ever because we have very good jobs and similar jobs. But there was a fourth quarter where the Jazz were down 45. It was the Clippers game that started on a Monday at 8:30 p.m. for some reason. And then there was the Cleveland game where I kid you not, because I've been on a break. I haven't had to work the games, but I've been paying attention to them. I was like, well, I'll get a quick pregame nap. And I'll sleep a little bit before the game starts. And I slept, and I ended up sleeping for like 90 minutes. I just had this horrible winter nap where I was gone, and I woke up and it was tip-off. And I thought, no, I've been asleep for 90 minutes. It's a Twilight Zone episode. And no, the rim was bent.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, man, what did Jake do?
Yeah, it was bent. You don't say. I could take you through that whole frustrating experience if you really want. Why right before tip is that when you notice that the rim's bent?
I had the exact same thought.
Why is that when you notice? And
I get that sometimes players dunk and that throws it off, but it's they dunk in games too. What actually is happening there? Yeah,
and
whose incompetence went overlooked?
Now, we have access to our good friend Jeremy Potter, who is very familiar with the operations of NBA arenas because, well, he's been doing it forever. And he was saying 20 minutes minimum to get a new standard in, okay? So for the first, half hour, they used 30 people to, do nothing.
Look at the existing one.
Some moron got up on the ladder and was yanking on the rim. And I was like, right. That's what we're doing? That's your solution? Yeah. Is there just some idiot yanking on it? That's it? That's what they did for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they took, the 20 minutes to get the other standard in and get it fixed. And it ended up being a 55-minute delay. Silly. Sometimes, I say this, jokingly when mistakes happen on the radio, but is this an NBA broadcast?
Right.
Is this an NBA game?
Right. No, I'm with you.
Millions of dollars are invested to make sure this goes correctly. And some idiot's up there yanking on the rim?
Right.
That's what we're doing.
Right. There is no kind of standard operating procedure that everyone knows to go to. It says, the second we realize this rim is bent, we have 90 seconds to see if we can fix it ourselves, and if not, we immediately go get the other stanchion and bring it in. Immediately, because there are 20,000 people here. There are at least 2 TV stations waiting to watch. There's at least 2 radio stations waiting to broadcast.
The players are ready to play.
The players are ready. The fans have to go places after this. We have to get this done in 30 minutes or less. Absolutely, at the absolute longest. And yeah, they were like, no, let's
get Bob up on the ladder.
It's a net
hey,
issue.
Bob, go yank on it. See if it comes back to normal.
Yeah.
The you just noticed before tip. You didn't notice this a half hour ago?
There isn't somebody out there who says, I'm going up there with the level.
Making sure?
Here, it's fine.
Yeah.
Here, it's fine. We're ready to play
where were you an hour ago, Bob?
Yeah. Anyways.
So, yeah, that was a fun game.
That was the most I thought about you, though, during the
well, I'm glad you didn't.
during the break.
Yeah, that was really something. And actually, I did have somewhere to go after the game, so it was I'll make some phone calls. And you know what? And it was the Donovan Mitchell game. It was a
big game.
Anticipated game from everybody.
Yep.
And Locke at one point was like, we may have to throw this back to studio. And I told Jamil, tell him no.
Tell me when to get food.
Tell him,
we're out.
Tell him no.
Shooting hoops on the floor. We're watching the hockey game. Whatever it is. What else you got to say, Ron?
Thanks for that pleasant memory. Yeah, well, back to you, Ron. Spin us some yarns. Which Booner could, and they filled fine. But yeah, at one point he's like, "Wait, we may have to throw it back to studio." I was like, "No, you don't. No, you're good. Come on, David, you're a professional."
Get out your radio chops.
Oh yeah, so that was really something. Yeah, but you say interesting from the Jazz. I'm curious to what you mean.
Well, I mean,
interesting, like in a good way, and we can dive into it. But
well, do you want to talk BYU or do you want to talk?
No, we should lead with BYU. That's
the
huge story.
Yeah, we'll get to the Jazz coming up at the top three.
I feel pretty good about one particular show. Well, I guess we only did one show last week, my Friday show.
Yeah.
Because everybody was saying BYU, around the Jazz. Everybody was like, "Oh, I hope BYU doesn't get blitzed." Like people I talk to in my personal life are like, "Well, are they going to score 1,000 points and BYU's going to lose by 50?" I mean, even BYU fans, that was like the what I observed surrounding it. And I came on the air on Friday. I said, "No, why would you think that? They have the best defensive backfield that they have had since 1996. They've got a lot going for them. And Colorado's defense, still not good. And their offensive line, by the way, still not good. And I was not a huge believer, as you know, in Colorado to begin with. So my take on Friday was like, where is that coming from? You know what I mean? BYU was perfectly equipped to win that ball game. And I didn't get where all the
negativity.
I didn't understand where all that was coming from. I love it that, Travis Hunter was playing, and we've talked a lot about Shedeur. But that doesn't make them unbeatable. And I know BYU lost a couple of games in November. That didn't make them any less capable, in my opinion, of winning that game. And they came out and stomped them. Good for the Cougs.
Absolutely. Colorado is not an elite team and wasn't going into the game. So good for BYU. I think if you had told me that Jake Retzlaff's final stat line would have been 12 for 21, 151 yards passing and 2 interceptions, I thought BYU certainly would have been in trouble with no touchdowns because I thought they weren't going to be able to score enough points there. But again, you have a special team score. You get 2 takeaways of your own, at least 2 takeaways through the air. Did they get any fumbles? And either way. And then they ran all over Colorado. I mean, they just, 180 yards on the ground? Just steamrolled Colorado whenever they needed to move the ball on the ground. It was 3rd and short, 2nd and short throughout the game. So credit them and credit Colorado for having their players show up, and I can say the same thing for BYU. They've got some guys who could jump to the league if they didn't want to come back next year and didn't have to play. They could have Cam Warded it and only played the first half, but good for everybody who played. It still wasn't a very good game, and that's just kind of the hit or miss aspect of bowl games. And you know what the nice thing is? If you win, you say, awesome, that was a great win for BYU, and they're up to 11 wins, and everyone's happy about it. And I'm sure Colorado fans haven't thought about that loss since.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Dion thought about the loss. We can definitely get to that. And I actually thought he was all class. And what he said about Kalani was really, really cool. But can we get back to your hypothetical you? If we were, you would have told me that he had 2 interceptions, 151 yards. Why? You're forgetting that they've Utah'd BYU.
They have.
Retzlaff isn't. I always sound insulting, and I'm not trying to because the guy just won 11 games. But he's not that great. He's not the reason that they won 11 games.
No,
and we just assume that the quarterback is so important that that's the reason that they're successful. And this game is actually a good example of the season as a whole, that they are a collective team. They are not about a dynamic quarterback. They're not really even about dynamic, individual players.
No, this is
really.
Not a Kyle Van Noy-led defense.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's very much a Utah team. I mean, the coaches came from Utah. It's very much a Utah team. They beat Colorado in very much a Utah way. Dynamic special teams, rock solid defense. They're going to run the ball. You know how Shedeur Sanders doesn't throw for 400 yards? Well, he's not on the field.
Yeah.
BYU dominated the time of possession. Yeah. They dominated the big plays.
Looked at what that number was.
Well, BYU had around 10 more minutes, I believe. Let me bring it up.
Which again is a lot.
11 more minutes than Colorado, which is a lot. Yeah. But I might add, how much of that 24 minutes did Colorado have in the second half or fourth quarter when it just wasn't?
The game was over.
The game was over.
Yeah.
It just wasn't happening. You know what I mean? Like BYU smothered Colorado.
Yeah. There wasn't even a fake comeback. There wasn't even a Colorado had a 14-0 third quarter. Colorado didn't outscore BYU in any of the quarters. Like it was never close. It never felt close. It never felt like Colorado was in the game. And I will say one of the things that's great about BYU, and I understand they had 2 losses this year, they were prepared for every single game. They didn't play well in every game. But I never once went in and thought, oh, BYU doesn't know what they're doing. Now, they had a really bad first half against Arizona State, and they came back and had a chance to win it because Arizona State couldn't throw the ball high enough in the air to end the game. But they were prepared. Like there was no time when BYU showed up. The way we have seen Utah at times show up to some games and be like, oh, man, they got blitzed. They totally got outclassed in that game. BYU was prepared every week, and that includes their game against Colorado. And I don't think Colorado was at all prepared for BYU.
No, I think you could make an argument the way that they came out, they probably underestimated BYU, which is probably true. But Kalani is a really good coach. He is. And he's become a better coach the longer he's been a head coach. And you know what? The knives have been out for him a couple of times down there in Provo. And he's managed to, win a big game against USC. I remember that time when kind of the rumblings were out that maybe Kalani wasn't the guy back with Zach Wilson's freshman year, something like that. And he wins some big games and gets that extension. And it wasn't the last time that there were some rumblings like maybe he wasn't the guy. He's great. He's great. And he deserves all the praise that he's getting for this 11-win season. And what he's doing with that program down there is fantastic. And now it sounds like behind the scenes they're going to start pumping even more resources into the program. And so, years of this BYU being a very difficult job, all of a sudden it's getting to be a little bit easier. And he's showing some success in that he's the guy for the Cougs. And I think that they were well coached this year. They were well coached in that bowl game. Absolutely.
Yep.
Showed up ready to roll.
And everyone showed up ready to play. It didn't look like a bunch of kids who had been on Christmas break.
Had a great game plan. I'll tell you what aggravated me after the bowl game. We can get to that in a second. But you never heard a negative complaining word about Kalani throughout the entire process. Like he's all class with Deion. Deion's all class. I mean, it was a feeling of kind of what sports are supposed to be, even though it was a really lopsided game. And I love it that Shedeur and Travis Hunter played. I do.
Absolutely.
And I know BYU fans are annoyed because that's all. I actually didn't listen to the broadcast because I watched it in the command center there
while you were working.
While I was working. So I didn't hear the lopsidedness of it. I guess they wouldn't shut up about the fact that those two played. But good. I think it's great that they played. Because the agents win too much and these players just, I'm not going to play because it's my own best interest. Yeah, but how about the team once in a while? Yeah. So I'm going to give him credit for doing it.
Shedeur was on his back the whole game. I mean,
he took a beating.
He took a lot of hits. He absolutely could have rested if he wanted to and just said, finger hurts in the first quarter and not play the rest of the game.
So
but he did.
Give him credit. Give him a ton of credit. He deserves it.
It's interesting you didn't listen to the broadcast because I was going to bring a point up that they mentioned, and it goes back to something you just said, which was they said they think Jake Retzlaff could be a top 5 quarterback in college football next year.
Yeah, well, they told me that about Cam Rising.
Well, exactly right. And I think that's really
true.
interesting. And you don't need him to be that.
No.
Now, again, it's this funny thing, which is always like, well, if Utah had a top 5 quarterback, think of how good they'd be with that defense. And again, it goes back to my, the system does what it does.
They've Utah'd BYU, and now BYU has to justify average quarterback play. And again, I don't want to harsh on Retzlaff. He's getting the job done. He did a great job this year, but he's not a top 5 quarterback.
And there is a huge switch that I hadn't looked at until literally right now of how well he started the year over the first 8 games and his last 5 games. His first 8 games, he was a 60% completion percentage, 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, including add in 3 more touchdowns on the ground. So he accounted for 21 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, 60% completion percentage. His last 5 games, now this includes Kansas and Arizona State, who were better teams, includes Utah, who's a good defense. He was 54%, so down about 6 percentage points. He was 2 touchdowns through the air, 5 interceptions, but did add 3 more on the ground. So he was about 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. His close to the season was not brilliant. It was not super strong. So I do think there is going to be some question going into next year of what type of player Jake Retzlaff is going to be, whether or not that's the narrative. I do worry that there's going to be a narrative that he's going to come back as a top 5 quarterback. And to your point, I don't think that's what the system allows you to be the way Utah and now BYU is playing.
And he's not that anyway.
And he's not that anyways. And more importantly, he doesn't need to be.
No.
Because guess what? For Colorado to win games, what do they need? They need Shedeur to not be a top 5 quarterback. They need him to be the best quarterback in the country. And when he's not, like he wasn't on Saturday because BYU made him look pedestrian, they were awful. Colorado was awful, even with Travis Hunter, who, if you give him the ball with 3 feet of space around him, it's a touchdown. He's that dynamic. And we saw it. He had that long touchdown. But if Shedeur is anything less than superb, they don't stand a chance. That's what was great about BYU. Jake Retzlaff doesn't have to be superb every game. In fact, he wasn't superb most games. He was just good most games. And you're going to win when he does that. That's a really well-coached team from top to bottom.
Now, I'll tell you what aggravated me was some of the coverage afterwards where people were saying, well, maybe BYU should have been in the playoff.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, you're just noticing that now? Well, BYU beat SMU. Maybe they should have been considered. It was like, wait, huh? Now you're saying that now?
I've hated that whole narrative for every team because as soon as SMU lost, and who was the other? I mean, every team got blown out. There were 4 straight blowouts in the opening round of the playoffs, and every team that lost, we thought, well, Clemson probably shouldn't have been there, or SMU probably shouldn't have been there, or Indiana probably shouldn't have been there. It's like, you know what? I think the same thing probably would have happened to BYU. If I'm telling you the truth, I think BYU probably would have gotten rolled by a lot of those teams as well. It's just what the system is. It's just what's going to happen. And if you want to keep fixing it and putting cats in the wall, you can. Was BYU better than Indiana this year? I bet they probably were. Do I believe that? Do I know they were better than SMU? Yes, I saw them on the field together. I just don't want to keep playing the game of, well, maybe this other team should have been in. It's like, yeah, there's too many teams in. That's what we've learned. And you can't keep switching out the 12th team trying to find the right opponent until you get a good game. It's not going to happen.
Okay. And yeah, and that's actually Kalani's approach, and I'm glad he didn't complain about it. Fine. But under present circumstances, present rules, evaluations, the stupid committee, and what they're supposedly judging on, it's ludicrous that BYU is left out. They beat SMU.
Yeah.
On the road.
Yep.
On the road.
Yep.
And then they had the same record. And SMU played in a worse league by a mile.
And didn't
the
win
ACC
their championship
and
game either.
Didn't win their league.
No.
What?
Yeah.
And now people are like, oh, BYU should have gotten in. Yeah. Again, the committee should have just picked Alabama. Because then they could have said, well, yeah, we're in the SEC's pocket. What do you want from us? But they picked SMU.
Yeah.
Again, Tom Olmo had to be sitting in his office going,
what do I have to do here?
Hey,
yeah.
Huh?
Yep.
And then you see the national bozos being like, oh, maybe BYU should have gotten in. Where you been?
Yep.
Where you been? Under present, like, supposed rules and circumstance. I thought that was hilarious. And you know what? Maybe it's one of those squeaky wheels kind of things because Kalani didn't complain about it for 1 second. And I appreciate that.
Yep.
Because to your point, I mean, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. That's why Mark Harlan kicking in the press conference door was stupid.
Didn't change anything.
What are you going to do about it? Nothing. You just look like a crybaby. So I appreciate that Kalani handled it like an adult. Maybe that's why it didn't get any attention. But it was ridiculous. And I think if BYU did anything, they proved that point. Like, okay, SMU got demolished. Well, we had a better resume than SMU. Who's to say we wouldn't have won? So.
Yep, I get you.
All right, more next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Let's start off with the good news of Kyle Whittingham coming back. Tell me what that means for this Utah team and what kind of legacy are we going to see Kyle Whittingham hopefully set himself up for this next season?
He's worked too hard. He's accomplished too much of that program. He's the Lavelle Edwards of Utah football. You think he wants to go out 5-7? Of course not. The challenge for Kyle Whittingham now is to come back with a renewed energy and vigor to turn this program around. Kyle Whittingham has to rebuild his own program. There's a lot lot of changes already. We're up past 15 players that are in the portal. He's got a brand new offensive coordinator in Jason Beck. Utah looks completely different now than they did even 3 or 4 weeks ago. This is going to be a lasting part of his legacy, is to turn around the program that went 5-7 and turn them into something special next season. And a lot of work Alex is going to have to go into that.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you about Win Ticket Wednesday. Don't miss your chance to win big every week on the KSL Sports Zone. Listen to the station all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. Time for the top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com, brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. 2 locations to serve you, one on Winchester Street across from Fashion Place Mall, the other at Traverse Mountain in Lehigh. All right, Christian, where are we starting today?
Number 1, we got the Jazz back in action tonight. They're hosting the Denver Nuggets.
I'm sure you dealt with some panic during the break of Jazz winning back-to-back games in Detroit and in Brooklyn. Detroit's actually a pretty good team, so that was a surprising win, and certainly the Jazz were up 30 in the first quarter. That was shocking. And then Brooklyn had just gone through a trade. They've since done another trade yesterday. But Brooklyn's not a good team. You're going to win some of those games. They have now lost 3 in a row, Cleveland, Portland, and Philly. But these last 2 games have been really close, and they actually played pretty well against Cleveland after the hour delay.
Yeah, no, they did. I am frustrated with this season. I'm going to get, I'm sure, into a better place with it come the new year. But the fact that they're incentivized to lose, and I would argue, and this is why you have to be so delicate with this stuff, are absolutely like in-game coaching to lose. And that's not a fair accusation. I hate it that we're like in this weird world, because the truth is that these teams are losing on purpose, but they can't talk about it because you're not supposed to lose on purpose, and it's this weird, stupid thing. But I mean, Will Hardy is playing these players down the stretch where he could be winning, and he's not. I come back to the Portland game. You wait just long enough to put Lowry and Colin Sexton back in the game.
Yeah.
Yep. You do these things where, like, if you look at the points at the rim in the fourth quarter against Portland, they had 23 in the first 3 quarters. Ben, they had 24 in the fourth. It was a layup line in the fourth quarter. Like, that's in some way, shape, or form, that's got to be intentional. And
the obvious place, and I
they should have beat Philly at home.
Yeah,
they
Philly.
absolutely should have.
Yeah. Oh, they should have beat Portland. Yeah, absolutely. Before the season started, I put out a little projected depth chart for the Jazz. And I riled up a lot of fans because I had Svi Mykhailiuk ahead of Cody Williams. And just based on how Will Hardy had played and coached his teams the last 2 years and the guys he'd played, he just kind of played the better guys. Svi Mykhailiuk is better than Cody Williams. And that's not a knock on Cody's future. Cody is 20. Svi Mykhailiuk's 26, played 4 years at Kansas or whatever, won a championship there, and has been in the NBA for 4 years. He was on the Boston Celtics last year. Yes, Svi is better than Cody Williams. He's better than Bryce Sensabaugh. But if you played Svi every game, including these last 2 games, if you had played him for 25 minutes a night or 25 minutes every night, the Jazz would be sitting at 15 wins right now, which is where Phoenix is. I have no doubt about that. And maybe 8 wins is a lot for one guy, but it's all these close games that the Jazz are not winning are by design. And you design it by playing a Cody or a Bryce or an Isaiah Collier minutes that you're going to lose the minutes that they're on the floor instead of having a guy out there who's going to hit 6 threes like Svi Mykhailiuk seems to do every time he steps up to the plate.
Listen, Micah Potter and Cousin Drew. That's, by the way, that's what instead of Uncle Drew.
Okay.
Tim and I are going with Cousin Drew. Yeah, Cousin Drew Eubanks are so much better than Kyle Filipowski. It's silly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's silly. Yep. Micah Potter has to be sitting there being like, dude, I'm sucking up DNPs over here. And by the way, he played against Philly. So, but, and I'm watching Flip out there.
Yeah.
Look like he's lost in the woods.
Yep.
It's frustrating to me. And not that development, and here's where we've been all year, and it's not like these guys playing is uninteresting. That's why I was going to ask you what was exactly interesting about it. But the point of it and the way, like Jazz fans at the game should have enjoyed an upset victory over the Sixers. They should have. But that's not how they played. That's not how they coached.
Nope.
They didn't coach to win. And I don't like it. And I get it, and I don't like it. You opened this segment by saying, I bet you dealt with some grumpy fans because they won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? What are we doing here?
I saw it online.
I know, and
yeah.
I hate it. I hate it.
I will say I thought Bryce was fabulous in the game against Philly. He had 20 points off the bench, and it was his most complete game. He just was rebounding. He was doing better things than he has done all year. And I actually thought Cody played well. 6 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist. He was 2 of 4 from the floor. I actually liked some of the shots that he took, which was just meaning he got to the rim and kind of made sense of the shots he took. He did have 5 fouls because, again, he weighs 130 pounds. And so every time he touches somebody, he's going to flail, and it's going to be a foul. But he was also a team-high plus 16. I thought you felt him when he was on the floor.
I don't know if I agree with that, but yeah. I mean, even when he gets to the rim, he's just like I described it Friday. It's just a whisper. I mean, he spots a little. I mean,
like
it's
a
not.
lane, yeah,
and he just whispers in and gets a layup, which is great. But that's not. He's going to have to learn to really get to the rim. And he does. He gets pushed around. The plus 16 was, I suppose, a good sign, but I barely notice it when he plays. I mean, I just do. I hate to admit it, but I barely know. If I didn't have to Cody Williams is in the game, I wouldn't even know.
He's going to have to learn to finish without ever weighing a whole lot. And, Kevin Durant has figured it out. And it's hard to say you got to be Kevin Durant. That's not what I mean. But, he's got to learn how Kevin Durant has made a career of getting off good shots despite the fact that he's not super strong.
See, I don't see him necessarily like a Kevin Durant who can't put on weight. I would love it
if he can look like his brother.
Don't make that judgment just yet.
Okay.
I mean, if honestly, like Taylor Hendricks put on 20 pounds in the offseason, it's too bad we're not. I mean, it's just always too bad to mention him and that we're not seeing him play. But, God, he would benefit so much from 20 pounds.
Yes,
if he could do 20 pounds in an offseason, and granted, during the season that goes down to 10.
Right.
But then you build on that the next offseason. Then
2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, if he can do that, that'll be great. And that's better than having to learn how to finish like Kevin Durant because KD's 1 of 1.
And it looks like Chet's not going to be able to put on weight.
Right.
I don't know if Wemby's going to be able to put on weight. Somebody like Sean Bradley just could not put on weight.
Kirilenko never did.
Yeah. So that is a thing. I gotcha, but I'm not ready to be there just yet, especially when you look at his brother.
Nuggets tonight here in Salt Lake City, and then back on a 4-game road trip.
I honestly hope the Jazz beat them, not because I'm rooting really or passionate one way or another. I'm just so I need a break from the. Well, you could have beat them if you would have coached to win. I just need a break from that.
And by the way, 3-game road trip, not 4, at New York, at Miami, at Orlando, after hosting the Nuggets tonight.
And I certainly need a break from the people that are like, "Oh, how dare you win that game?" I need a break from that. By the way, do you think Locke is taking diapers with him?
What?
Well, they're going to be at Times Square for
New Year's.
Yeah, and isn't that a thing like you
wear
can't
a diaper.
Because there's not a can available, like there's just no way to go, and so you diaper it up.
Okay. There's some logic there.
He claims that he's going to just hang out in the hotel room, but I don't believe him. I think he bought a pack of Huggies.
On a diaper.
I think he's going for it. It's what you'd do.
Why don't you ask him tonight?
I asked him on Saturday night. He told me no.
Okay.
Number 2, a little bit of breaking news out of Provo. BYU is landing standout defensive tackle Keanu Tanuvasa from the transfer portal.
This hurts for Utah fans. This is real insult to injury. That Tanuvasa entered the transfer portal at all. He's got 2 years left to play. But there was at least some thought he was going to go to USC or Michigan, and you thought, okay, go play for a Big Ten school. I get it. Transferring to your rival, where this is a position of strength historically for Utah. I mean, D tackles is maybe what Utah has done better than anything in the last 20 years under Kyle Whittingham. To transfer to BYU, where that has not necessarily been their strength. Obviously, it's got to be money related, but that's going to be sharp, especially because Keanu Tanuvasa was one of those guys who tweeted out, like, a Utah man am I? Like, I'm a Utah guy through and through, and then deleted it and is now playing for BYU.
Yeah, well, you're pretending like any of that stuff matters anymore.
Right.
Like, that used to be some really good stuff. You know, it used to be some really good stuff that we had in college football. Taught a lot of important lessons like overcoming hardship and loyalty and, all those sorts of things. But, yeah, that stuff doesn't matter to a lot of people. And so now it really doesn't matter to anybody. Like, did you see and I should bring it up before I talk about it, but did you see the Jim Mora Jr. complaint about people tampering with his players?
He did not. He's at UConn, right?
He's at UConn,
Yeah.
and he was saying, for all you coaches that called our guys, we know who you are, and we are going to do something about it. And it's like, Jim, I love your sentiment, dude, and stick to the rules and all that, but, dude, everybody determined that was crap and threw that out 4 years ago now, 3 years ago.
Right. And it's getting more and more every year.
And so, like, okay, you said something, but really, aren't you just whizzing into the wind? I mean, I don't think you're saying what you think you're saying. Like Nick Saban getting all bent out of shape about being called Alabama Jones and a cheater, basically on College game day. Like, and he gets so insulted by it. It's like, that's not the world anymore, Nick. It's now a joke. People knew you were cheating for years. You don't need to defend your integrity anymore. It's all above board. And so, like, yeah. People are tampering with your players? Well, you know what? People have been tampering with everybody's players the whole season.
Right.
The whole season. I mean, I'm sure that Tanuvasa going to BYU, that he knew what was out there for him. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Here, Keanu Tanuvasa was on the Blockcast, which is Steve Bartle's podcast here at KSL Sports. In fact, talking about BYU. Now, this was talking about the rivalry game. I haven't heard this, so I'm curious to hear what he had to say about BYU in general.
And the week leading up to it, right, that bye week was just fueled with energy and passion and I wouldn't say anger or hatred. Mm-hmm. It's a rivalry game, but it's not like they're the worst people on the earth.
Right. Right.
It's not like they've actually done things to deserve my hate.
Yeah.
They've deserved everything to deserve my best competition.
I was curious if that's what it is, that excitement to compete.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. And the understanding of what's to come for the next year,
Yeah.
for the next 365 days.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hate you, but one of us is going to be on the side of, man, I wish I won that game. And someone else is going to be like, yeah, we got you, you know? So I'm not going to hate them for beating us, for competing against us. That's a game of rivalry. I'm going to love, and I did. That game was amazingly filled with action and competition.
I don't know. I think he meant that at the time, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
sure, absolutely. Look, he
not,
never draw a line in the sand and say, I would never play for BYU. Not that he was asked if he'd play for BYU, but I don't think, he ever expressed any, like he said, hatred towards BYU at all. So I'm not surprised that, the right type of money talks and the right opportunity talks, and he makes the jump. He was probably Utah's best player last year, in all honesty.
I don't think there's really a probably.
Yeah, I mean, he was.
Yeah, he's an all-conference defensive tackle.
Yeah, and now he's going to BYU.
Yeah.
So, nice thing if you're a Utah fan. Utah creates these types of guys. They will replace him.
You know what builds rivalries, though? And this is the sad part about all of this, is the players do remember exactly what he's talking about. Like, oh, we'll remember this next year, and I'm really mad. And that stuff just doesn't matter anymore.
Yep.
I mean, the fans, I'm sure, will still feel it with the rivalry, but if you're a player, what do you care? Anyway, next.
Number 3, we got the Utah Hockey Club at the Seattle Kraken tonight.
A downstretch, again, for the Utah Hockey Club, but they were at home, and they are terrible at home, and they're really good on the road. So we'll see if they can get back to their winning ways. They have something about playing Anaheim so far this year has really thrown off their momentum. They were really good to start the season. They played Anaheim and never really seemed to be able to regain it. They did the same thing. They had won 4 in a row. They were up 4-1 on Anaheim, ended up losing 5-4 in the shootout, and have lost 3 straight. So they got to regather themselves. They seem to go on these spirals, and they got to figure out a way to avoid doing it.
I'm just paying close attention to this home road thing, actually. I started off kind of mocking it, but I'm paying close attention to it. Not that, it's any sort of diagnosis of the team, but I think home road means nothing in hockey. And guys like Cole Bagley have disagreed with that point. but I don't think home ice means much. And there's a randomness to this team that I think actually proves that fact.
I think a randomness to hockey in general.
Uh-huh.
And I'm more with you. Yeah, again, to lose a game, you're up 4-1, and having done it twice now at home is a major flaw. There's just some randomness to it. You know what I mean? There just has to be. There's some puck luck involved in that. Going to a shootout, which is one-on-one and should ideally come down to skill. Clayton Keller's shot goes off the crossbar.
Right.
A half inch from being in. You know what I mean? There is some randomness there. I think I'm with you.
Yeah. All right. Stay tuned. We'll have more Jake and Ben coming up right around the corner, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
G-Bang!
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz. Woo! Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
What's that?
Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. We will get into more college football and Jazz convo coming up in the 11 o'clock hour, so make sure and stay tuned for that. We were teasing Christian about his Broncos for not being able to get the W over your Bungles, Ben, in order to get that playoff berth. They're still alive. We're all rooting against them. But
and it's not a given that they beat Kansas City next week. I get Kansas City's not playing their starters. I get it. It's not a guaranteed win. There are no guaranteed wins in the NFL. Look at the Giants and the Colts who played yesterday. Giants needed to lose that game to lock up the number 1 overall pick. They win. And now they're 4th. They dropped 5th. They dropped a lot. If they want to get back to having the number 1 overall pick and either taking, Shador or Cam, it takes a lot of draft capital to move up 4 spots in the draft.
It does.
So that was a unfortunate win for your Giants.
Can I tell you my personal favorite moment of the NFL weekend? Is when Aaron Rodgers was playing against the Bills, and they were getting blown out.
Was it 40-0?
At one point. And Aaron said to his coach, probably ought to play...
not me anymore.
Probably ought to play Tyrod.
Who's like your guy.
Is my guy, the Hokie.
Yeah.
Steps in, and they scored immediately.
He did 2 straight drives with touchdowns.
Immediately. I was like, oh, man. Christmas ain't over. That was easily the highlight. And by the way, now you see this stuff out there like, will the Jets part ways with Aaron Rodgers? It's like, if they're smart.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have brought him in.
No.
So, no, they're not smart. So, no, they're not going to part ways.
And then I still go back to your Hard Knocks, the one episode of that silly show that I decided to watch, and it was just all clowning Zach Wilson because they're all like, oh, man, it's so good to see a decent quarterback. Oh, jeez. And
Zach Wilson now.
And not only, Zach has a better record as a Jets quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. And now my guy, Tyrod, is stepping in and being better than Aaron Rodgers, too. This is the greatest thing ever.
I'm with you. No, I just checked the box score, and I thought, what happened? And then I read the story, and I said, oh, that's amazing. That's great.
That's so good.
Yep, it is.
All right, we'll have more Jake and Ben straight ahead. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.